everyone. Welcome back to Rally Caps. It's a podcast for artists, entrepreneurs, and everybody in between. I'm Steven.
And my name is Eric.
And today we have a really fun Q&A episode prepped for you guys. You left us a bunch of amazing questions. We put out a call earlier this week on Instagram, and you guys showed up, like truly showed up. It was amazing. We got a whole list of those right now. But before we get into those questions, a few housekeeping details just to catch up a little bit. First and foremost, if you've been watching the show for any amount of time, especially in 2024, which we've been consistent weekly on all year long, we would really sincerely appreciate if you took the time just to leave a quick rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Just tell us how you're liking the show. Leave a quick little 5-star. It really, truly helps boost the show to more people. That's how all of these podcast providers know when to spread and recommend the show to a wider audience. So we would so appreciate if you just took like a couple seconds to do that. And if you're on YouTube right now watching the show, hey, how's it going? Hello. You look great. We would love if you subscribe to the channel, liked the video, shared it with a friend, and left a comment down below telling us how much you're enjoying the show this year. And maybe if you have any ideas for like episodes on the horizon. We would love to get more audience feedback in general. So thank you so much for considering doing any of the above things that I just mentioned.
Yeah. If you're on YouTube also, if
yes,
any question that didn't get answered and you have another question, just leave it down in the comments.
Yeah, we'll definitely just stack questions for future episodes. We'd love that. Number 2 for housekeeping, Eric, today is Monday, July 15th? 14th. 15th. Today is Monday, July 15th, which means that in just 5 days' time, something's happening on Saturday in New York City. What is that?
In New York City, we are premiering Moving Still, our documentary we've been working on for 2.5 years.
Yes.
If you've been listening to Rally Caps, you know that we did a documentary with Joe Greer. The New York City premiere is happening this coming Saturday, July 20th, in Manhattan, the RVA Theater, and
SVA.
Dang it.
SVA Theater, I think.
SVA Theater.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Close enough.
Go to the Eventbrite. You can find all the details there.
It's linked below. So there might still be some tickets left. If there are, go and get them. Mm-hmm. It's over 75% sold out.
Yeah. By the time of listening,
of recording right now,
I'd say like 75-80% sold out. So not a ton of tickets left. So if you are interested at all, please just buy a ticket and come out to it. It is realistically, it's the last Northeast screening that we'll do. We did technically do one in Boston at the Leica Boston Gallery in April, which was a much smaller audience, about 70-ish people. But we can say at this point that this is going to be really the last like public screening, ticketed screening that we'll be doing in the Northeast. So if you have had any interest at all, and the Northeast, New York City specifically, is the closest option to you, we can tell you with all certainty, just like go buy a ticket, come out to it. It'll be a really good event.
It's not just a movie. It's not just a ticket to a movie. There's going to be open doors for an hour before the movie, so there's going to be mingling. There's going to be some really cool, fun, creative people there, people that inspire the heck out of us in New York City. So it'd be cool to just meet new people, get just kind of involved in the New York scene or in that creative scene. You'll see the entire 75-minute film, and outside of just watching a movie or going to watch some random movie, we are convinced that this film will leave an emotional impact on you in a way that maybe you're not expecting, because the superficial approach to it is very much a running documentary and kind of an artist, but we really dig deep into Joe's life and career and trauma. And there's some really incredible takeaways from this film.
Yes.
So outside of then watching the movie, there's going to be a live Q&A between Joe, the subject of the film, and Gene, Steven, and I, the crew. So people will be able to ask live questions. We've done that at each premiere. It's a really special time. And some mingling after that as well. So just a really cool, fun event. And one that if you feel like you're on the fence, you should just go. Even if you're like a 2-3 hour drive away, consider it.
It'll be worth it. It'll be really, really fun. We're really looking forward to it. It's going to be a very fun premiere, especially because of some of those special friends of ours that will be joining us and gracing us with their presences that night. So, housekeeping out of the way. Wait, actually, one other thing. This is an addendum to the first housekeeping detail. I thought of this morning, actually. I think it would be so cool, and just like in the spirit of talking about like milestones and different things for the show and all that, I think it'd be so cool if we got to like 1,000 ratings on the show. You know, like really sourcing and pulling audience feedback and like getting people actually on board, because we certainly have seen a lot of growth for the show this year so far, both listenership and viewership. I feel like the audience is there.
Yeah.
It just takes a little bit of like reminding sometimes, like, hey, just a quick little hit the link, drop the little 5-star, easy peasy. I just feel like that little badge of like hitting like a 1K mark in the review section is just like, whoa, they've actually been around doing this thing, showing up, making it happen. That's a personal milestone that I'd like to just put out in the world for Alley Caps. So
please do it.
Help us achieve that. That'd be amazing. I love that. Okay, cool. Housekeeping done. Q&A on.
Start.
Great. Really fun first question that I want to start things off with. Got a question from our buddy Zach Elkins Creative at Zach Elkins Creative. I say fun. This is actually like a deeper, more philosophical one, because I think this is gonna be like maybe like the anchor that will kind of title the show, this episode specifically. His question: currently working a full-time job and running my creative business on the side. Classic. We've all been there. If you started over building your business, what would you do differently or do again to get a sustainable place to consider it as a career? Or should I just risk it all, quit my job, and go all in on my business?
Well, first off, shout out Zach. Love you, dude.
Shout out Zach.
Yeah, he came through the studio at one point, and we got a chance to sit down and talk. I tend to just give this as the recommendation to everyone, is that I think leveraging an existing career, an existing job to grow a side hustle and a side career is the safest way to go about it. It's the least amount of risk. And then that's where you start getting into the nuance of every individual, depending on how much risk tolerance you have based on your life circumstances. If you have a family, if you have kids, if they're relying on your income to survive, to thrive, to be a family, that's where my recommendation is continue to leverage your existing job to finance your side hustle, the career you want to grow. Because if that's not even profitable yet, we got to be real that that's just a hobby. So once that can start making significant income, and even significant enough, maybe 2/3 of what you already have coming in with your full-time job or part-time job, that's when I think you should start, thinking about jumping into full-time, because there's no doubt that once you're able to jump into full-time into that thing, you can pour so much gas on that fire, you can network so much more, you can market it so much more. And so that's very nuanced. And anyone that's thinking about just jumping to doing it full-time, I always approach those conversations with a ton of caution, because I would only recommend it to someone who I knew could handle it.
Yeah.
They had the skill set, the drive, the ability to thrive in that situation where their back is up against the wall and they can make it work.
Yes.
And so if those things are true of you, yeah, it's totally possible. But there's a ton of power in being able to leverage what you already have to subsidize what you want to have. So that's always what I recommend, being the safest way, especially if you can just like stack a good 3 to 6 months of savings or more, maybe 6 to 12 months of savings as you jump into full-time, the other thing.
Yep. I chose this question as the first one because I felt like it was the deepest and the one that resonated most with both of us, especially because you and I started in very different ways too. I think the family component is a huge part of it. Like if you do have any dependence basically of any kind, go cautious. Like absolutely. There's no reason to risk really anything when you're starting that kind of creative side hustle.
To go
like just
chase your dreams.
Yeah, it's just like just let the thing continue to grow at its own pace. Like there's no reason to like fast track that necessarily. Just let it continue to grow. I had a very different start with my business. I did go the route of graduating college and then immediately just saying I'm going to work for myself and just building a business.
Yeah.
The difference between you and I, we both started young. You were married and working a full-time job as a teacher and had a young kid. I had a very serious girlfriend who is now my partner, Laura, but we weren't married yet. I had the cheapest rent of my entire life at that point in time. And I had no children to look after either. So I was like, well, yeah, my risk is the lowest it will ever be in my entire life. Why not just try this thing right now and just see what happens? Because the risk truly is so low. I was paying $350 in rent. Like
Goodness.
it was my expenses were so low. It just felt foolish not to try, because when else in my life would I ever have that little to worry about? So I did that because I could, kind of. I did assess all of the risk. And even though I do not consider myself someone who is pro risk, I think I'm risk adverse in a lot of ways. Yeah. I decided like this would be a good way to grow a little bit.
Your whole life
and just try
doesn't
something.
really resemble that, though. That's the thing.
Risk adverse?
Yeah, you say that about yourself, but you right out of college, you decided to work for yourself.
Yeah.
You moved across the country. You're pivoting your job. Like, I think you got to give yourself a little bit more credit in the risk category.
Oh, well, thank you.
I think it is true to some extent, but like you've definitely like really gone out on a limb a handful of times in the past 10 years. Yeah.
I definitely have.
Yeah.
The recent ones have not paid off at all. So yeah, that's why you pay the price for it sometimes. But all that to say, I think you nailed it. It's like, I think really situational. Really depends on where you are at in your stage of life, what age you are, and how many people are depending on you to be providing income for yourself, your family, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully that helps. I think just kind of broad two camps, kind of evaluate where you're at in your own personal creative journey and whether or not it is worthwhile to take that risk or how long, I guess, you should get runway from your primary job, which actually might be a good way to kind of close out this question. How long were you working your full-time job as a teacher before you decided, okay, my wedding business is at a place where it's good enough to just dump all my time and energy into that thing?
I was expecting to go 10 years in teaching.
Okay.
I had a scholarship in the state of Illinois where I needed to teach 2 years out of the first 5 that I was out of college. So that was bare minimum. I needed 2 to not have to repay all my tuition.
Yep.
So I got my 2 years done. And at that point, I was thinking 10 years. But at that point, I was shooting like 20 weddings a year. But we just had our first kid. Was going to bank on the health insurance a bit more. We were, I think, pregnant with Theo, our second, at that point as well. So I went a third year. And then, as I've said a lot of times on the internet, that was like the craziest year of my life because I shot 25 weddings, was coaching basketball, full-time teacher, commuting back and forth.
You're coaching the Bulls, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, at that point, Derrick Rose hadn't had his season-ending injury yet. It was actually that time.
Was it actually?
It was such a good era of the Bulls. Standing in front of the TV screaming every night.
Yep.
Yeah, so it was. It could have been 2 years. It ended up being 3 years.
Yep.
And after that third year, when I remember distinctly, we had a party after my last day of school down in the city, and it was just this moment of, it felt like this immense burden was lifted off of me, and now I could just fully sprint after my creative stuff.
Cool.
But the proof of concept was there.
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to add before we close this question out is that within your creative career, you have the ability to leverage things that do work proof of concept wise to pivot into other things as well.
Sure, yeah.
And so in the same way that you have a part-time or full-time job and you're pursuing, say, wedding photography, wedding filmmaking, you could be using wedding photography and wedding filmmaking as that new foundation to then pursue something else as well. And I feel like that's how I've leveraged a lot of my creative career as well. It's kind of that same model over and over.
Yep.
But this time, instead of completely abandoning the teaching, I'm still holding on to some of those foundational pieces and just diversifying it within the business.
Sure.
So know that that's a possibility in the future as well. And a recommendation I have over there is like, find the proof of concept of what works entrepreneurially for you. Is it making money? Is it profitable? And then use that as a leverage point, because you don't want to step into something where you don't have the proof of concept and then you don't have the foundational piece to then pivot into the new thing.
Totally.
And so I think at the very least for you is like photography, wedding photography, and commercial portrait, that stuff was at least some sort of foundational base that you could rely on while then you pivoted into design as well as some other ideas. But I almost
like recently.
Yeah. I almost feel like if you wanted to pivot 5 to 10 years from now, you would be probably using design as that foundational piece without letting go of photography or design, you know?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. Just trying to build as many new bases as possible, essentially.
Yeah, that diversification is, I mean, we've talked about it in a recent episode. It's just, it feels like a superpower.
Yeah.
Because it's just hedging your bets. It's bringing that risk tolerance. It's making risk tolerance more possible.
Yep.
Because you're just like, well, I have these other resources. I just need to pour gas on that fire. And you have a couple of fires going.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually just want to add a quick point of clarification too. To me, you know, graduating, then immediately going into self-employment, touching on the proof of concept idea, I was working as a student photographer at my college for 3 years prior to doing that. So I did have, time where I wasn't dependent on the income from my hobby, but got to see how good it felt to make money, even though it was very little money. I got to experience that feeling, that transactional experience of like, oh, I can deliver photos to you and you will give me money in return. That's a crazy thing to be able to do that as a young student, especially. Yeah. And then by the time that I was about to graduate, I did have people who were reaching out because I'd built up enough of a portfolio on my Instagram page saying, hey, we just graduated. We have no money, but we just need a photographer. You look like you have great work. Do you shoot weddings? Is this something you're interested in? We have $500 kind of thing. And I was like, well, that's something.
Yep.
That sounds awesome, actually. Yeah. So there was a bit of like base building in that sense too. It wasn't like I just picked up a camera when I graduated and decided to do it. It wasn't just like this, oh, awesome, overnight success kind of thing. It was like, no, there's 3 years of kind of learning the foundational business component of things with photography, and then actually having some level of inquiry to post-graduation work. And it was there that I was able to take that work on and then parlay that into other inquiries, share those weddings immediately so that people that were getting married end of summer that year, elopement kind of thing, like share it quickly, show that I'm doing it. And then the inquiries just started to roll in after that. So the proof of concept thing, I think, is incredibly valid and absolutely should be kind of like the indicator for you, whether or not that's even a good thing to invest more time into. And ultimately, like, what time should I end up committing to that thing? So Zach, thank you for the question. Really appreciate it. Sammy Vasquez, at Sammy A. Vasquez, who was at, I think, our first or second coffee meetup this year. I can't remember which one it was, but he drove from Ohio to come hang out, which was super sweet.
Incredible.
So much fun to hang out with him. He asks, what has been inspiring us recently within the past 3 months? Just any source of inspiration that you're finding right now?
Oh, I feel like our YouTube conversation kind of covered that as far as different YouTubers we have been watching. But this has been true of me for, I think, the better part of 2 years, is that I feel like I've been a bit too busy to really like feel inspiration from different things, because so much of my time is just, I really don't have a lot of free time between training, family time, work time. I still want to be able to catch up with. So I guess my answer is The Bear has been a huge source of inspiration. And we're working on a short film right now that I'm really excited about. But I guess it's narcissistic to say that it's kind of an amalgamation of a lot of short films I've made over the past 2-3 years. There's a lot of reoccurring themes, kind of the same scenes, same characters in us, like in the studio, my family.
In the short film that you're working on. Yeah.
So I don't know. That's a weird answer, but it's been a lot of running stuff for me. Watching other people's running channels, being inspired by pro athletes and stories that are being told. I think Bandit as a brand is just doing really, really cool things. I love seeing brands like that be super creative. They did something with the U.S. Olympic trials. They did this last year as well, the unsponsored campaign. Any athlete that doesn't have a sponsor, but they're competing at that elite level, end up wearing some sort of brand when they compete, even though they're not sponsored by them. So they're a billboard for this company, even though they're not giving them any money. So Bandit came through for these athletes and just gave them completely unmarked kit to wear that's entirely black with no logo. And it was kind of a silent protest to like, you don't get to use me as a billboard if you're not going to, subsidize my ability to be an athlete this way. Right. Love that kind of, because they're like crushing it in the creative world, Chris Chu, our good friend, is doing a lot of video production for them and documentary work. So that's been super inspiring. So yeah, I guess I need to be fair to myself that there has been a bunch of stuff
Totally.
That's inspiring. But I guess my feeling and my sentiment is that I haven't really been actively looking for those things.
Sure.
Because a lot of what I've been doing is, us just kind of surviving through shooting, editing, and marketing and doing the documentary, building my running brand, and then all the administrative stuff between building a new website and coaching and in the running space. So I feel like once I get past that, I'm going to have a much more free time to start consuming different things artistically.
For sure.
How about you?
I am an avid reader, and my biggest source of inspiration lately has just been the books that I've been digging into, which has been so much fun. I find that to be my favorite way to keep my creativity engaged while also giving my eyes and my brain a break from the stuff that I am creating constantly. It feels like it is just an onslaught sometimes. And having morning, like getting up early to read with Laura in like our little library room that we constructed for ourselves, or, instead of watching TV after work, just choosing to read a book, or in bed. I love my Kindle so much. It's always on my bedside table, and knocking out 30 minutes of a book rather than just mindlessly scrolling on something is so much better for me. And I absolutely love it. So I generally gravitate towards reading like in a book form, either paperback or in Kindle, anything fiction. So that would be like, I love like murder mysteries, thrillers, things along those lines. I find so fascinating and really cool. And it's, I think, a really good practice for us as artists to translate that into scenery in our minds and just use our minds to create those worlds without having any kind of actual visual stimulus. And then I will also read by way of audiobook, and I usually use that on my commute. Talked about that, I think, in last week's episode, actually, about kind of changing things up and actually shaving my commute down considerably going forward once we move in August, which I'm so happy about. But one thing I will miss is that time, like 45 minutes each way in the morning to just like consume audiobooks and use that. I really like to listen to nonfiction. So, I'll read fiction and I'll listen to nonfiction. And I find that to be a nice balance for myself personally. And it feels so refreshing to me. It's just like, it feels like almost kind of like cleans things up in here, dusts the cobwebs off, lets me take a break while still being engaged at the same time. And I love it. So that's, I'd say primarily where I'm finding inspiration from. And then, also The Bear, because it's the best show on the planet. So season 3 rocks. And I can't wait for us to record an episode about it as soon as you have watched it. So it's so good.
You got to give them time to watch it as well.
That's like a spoiler episode that we will actively dissuade people to listen to if you haven't seen it, because the only way to have a conversation about that show is to like actually talk about everything going on in it. And I don't want to spoil it for anyone either. So that might be the episode that has our lowest listenership of all time because we'll tell people not to listen if they haven't watched it, but that's fine too. Your timer did go off. Do we have to switch batteries on?
I think we're good for
Tally light's looking good. All right. Next question from Vince Pettit Jean Photo. Thank you, Vince, for this question. Updates on the A7C2. I think I can handle that one pretty easily. I love it. It's great. It's super fun. The body is compact and awesome, and it feels totally different than using any other DSLR or mirrorless camera that I have used in the past. I especially am loving the Sony G Master 50 1.4 that I got with it, because that is a really compact and really gorgeous 50 millimeter lens. The rendering is just incredible, and I love the fall off and everything about it, and the size. The whole kit is just, it's scratching the exact itch that I needed scratched. So really, really enjoying it overall. I don't know if it'd be like the forever camera for me, but right now, in the kind of weird in-between spot that I find myself with photo and the type of work that I'm doing, I think it's really the kind of perfect hybrid for this very, very specific intersection of crossroads that I'm at with like photo, video, YouTube, like all these things. It kind of checks all the boxes for me. So 2 thumbs up. I'm loving it. It's really great.
You haven't been able to really use it for video at all yet, right?
Not a ton. No, I used it a little bit on vacation, but I plan on, it'll be like my, obviously a cam for any YouTube videos that I make soon. And I have the Sony G 20mm 1.8 as well, which I really like for video. It's a nice perspective for video. I've always really enjoyed ultra wide stuff. It's good for stills too, but I kind of got it with the intention of video. And the video quality is excellent. It's like 10-bit 422, 4K, awesome. Like it grades really nicely. S-Log 3, like it's great. I love it. No, so the update is good. Vince also asked, "What's your editing? What? Let me try that again.
Yep.
What's your editing workflow for weddings?" And I'm going to let you take this one because I'm not editing as many weddings these days.
Yeah. So wedding photography, I will back up to multiple places. One being my NAS, one being an SSD, one being my main computer. All of the images between myself and my second shooter, which is the case most of the time now. That's anywhere from 4,000 to 8,000 photos. And then calling that down inside Lightroom. Mm-hmm. So embedded in sidecar files within Lightroom to speed up the process of toggling through quickly. And
did you ever have a photo mechanic phase?
I did.
Okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
But now Lightroom is essentially just as fast when you build it that way. So a lot of times, either Cyrus or I will cull through those galleries.
Yep.
And a cheat is flipping them into reverse, because if you shoot in succession with 5 or 6 of the same image in the same scene, you're usually shooting your better frames towards the back of those.
Yep.
So that was a tip someone gave me a long time ago. So usually put them in reverse.
That's
and
good.
then selecting the first or second image in a group like that.
Yeah.
And flying past the other 3.
That's cool. So you start with like end of day.
Yeah.
And just go work your way to the end. Mm-hmm. Ah, that's cool. I like that.
So then if the first round doesn't get it to around 1,000 or just under 1,000, then going through one more time and just kind of trimming the fat there.
Yep.
And then once all of those are culled, the metadata is in there. It's usually just 1 star or no star, and then maybe a 5-star for a portfolio or website or whatever. Then I will do AI editing through developed Impossible Things, which is their AI editing software. So my cloud style of 6 of 6 presets, which are my presets, are done through Impossible Things. So all I have to do is run that system through sets of images, and it will do a lot of the heavy lifting between now there's auto crop and straightening. And so I like that feature too, because it doesn't do like a crazy amount of cropping. But when you go into individual images, it's already pushed in a little bit. So if you need to readjust the crop, all you have to do is hit R for the hotkey, and then you can just start shifting the box.
Right.
Instead of having to drag the box and then shift it. There's still plenty of fine detail stuff I need to do after that, but it's essentially just giving a great base. It's speeding up the process of what I would do before in my workflow, which was apply my preset across a big batch of scenes. And then in library mode, I would kind of tweak things before I went to develop mode. So that does that process for me. And then I'm going one by one in develop mode to clone stamp, adjust hues and temperature and contrast ratios, highlights, getting it exactly how I want. I'm pretty much convinced that it's going to take a long, long time for AI editing to get to the place where it's like 95 to 100%. Mm-hmm. So there's still definitely that realm of like needing to go one by one through images. And I would want to do that anyway, just to make sure that the quality of what I'm delivering is right. So once that process is done, then I'm exporting everything at full resolution. Any film photography scans I have, I'm adjusting those from Nice Film Lab, high resolution TIFF scans that need a bit of editing because they're flatter. Mm-hmm. And so exporting all that stuff, full resolution, uploading it to PicTime, and then doing all my stuff with automations on delivery and print orders and all that stuff. But I don't need to like super get into that part.
Sick.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Well, hey, let's take a quick break.
Okay.
For a word from our sponsor, which is us changing the battery on our camera that's about to die.
Because I left my C70 at home.
But we're going to, as soon as this clip merges with the next one, we're going to continue the wedding conversation with another great question about workflow type things and gear. So
great.
Yeah, give us a sec. We'll be right back. Seamless transition. We're back already.
Whoa.
Look at that. That's so crazy. You were in the before clip and now you're in the now clip.
Whoa.
That's awesome.
It's like Inception.
It's like Inception in here. Okay, continuing on with the wedding chat. At Trey Wide Open asks, what's the most underrated and the most overrated pieces of gear for filming weddings? I'm going to give that one to you also because that's about wedding filmmaking. So, okay, most underrated piece of gear for filming a wedding.
Overrated. All I can think of is the Parks and Rec scene with the filmers and undercook, overcook. Underrated. The most underrated, most overrated.
Mm-hmm.
Most overrated. This is a hard question because I would want to evaluate a bunch of stuff, but I guess I'll just kind of do it off the cuff.
Yeah, gut check.
Overrated. I can't determine if the gimbal is the overrated one or the underrated one. I feel like so much of the high-end wedding filmmaking scene relies on a gimbal so much, and I agree. It just feels so elevated.
Mm-hmm.
It feels just those sweeping shots of the tables. Like, that's not my crowd. But if you're in that and you're wanting to really showcase the scenery, the details, the just extravagance of it all, I feel like doing that, I think it's really cool to do it in kind of like the shaky documentary style that I do, but I think a lot of that clientele doesn't really want that.
Yep.
So depending on which camp you're in, super overrated in my world.
Yep.
And I guess really underrated in the, am I saying that right? In the high-end world?
Yeah. I think let's talk about it in terms of your world then. I think for you, speaking personally, a gimbal is overrated.
Yes. And then with any industry and creative industry, there's going to be seasons of peaks and valleys of things that are popular and unpopular.
Right.
And it almost feels like we're coming up out of the valley of everyone hating gimbals and then like going back.
You think so?
To it.
Okay.
Well, or I don't know. I haven't really seen people go back to it, but I think there is a creative advantage of your work standing out if you were to use it again. And then use it in a creative way that other people, like not using it for that high-end world. So I guess underrated.
Great.
Because I'm really contemplating using one for one that we're filming this year.
Oh, in Colorado?
Yeah.
Nice.
I think it could be absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Cool.
Another super underrated, reliable quality audio.
Bingo.
Yeah. That's the if your audio is booty, like your film isn't good. It's half of what makes filmmaking.
Yes.
So if that audio is peaking or you have it, your levels are too low and you're getting a lot of hissing, any of that kind of stuff, if you can't get a clean output, I'm not saying it needs to be perfect, just something that's reliable and sounds good. If you can get something that has 32-bit float, incredible. Or our Sony clip mics on the low sensitivity setting, they're pretty much rock solid.
Would recommend the 32-bit float though. There are so many recorders out there now that it's just, why not?
Yeah.
And they're great too. Recorders that have, I mean, I feel like all good recorders have this, but hold switches and good locking lav sections as well. You never want an accidental just like mic getting yanked out of something, especially on a wedding day when there's like really fussy attire and people are kind of a little like more stiff than usual anyway, and someone might bend down to grab something, then it just pops right out. So locking connections on those recorders, huge. And a 32-bit float is just like, why not have it at this rate? Like the Tascam DR10L Pro, incredible.
Yep.
Just get a bunch of those. And they have white ones as well to match a bride's dress on a wedding day. And then like the Zoom F3, F6, we had really good experience with those so far.
Going out of a speaker or something. So then I would say overrated, generally speaking, is just like too much gear.
Yeah.
Like too big of a setup, 6K, crazy dynamic range, cinema camera. Like, that's great. When you walk away with 2 terabytes of footage, not so great.
Shooting raw is overrated.
Yeah. So we'll say that, like shooting raw, shooting all the high end crazy, like, and guilty as charged. Like I've done that. I've wanted to go that route, but I want to say it as a point of encouragement to people that virtually any camera you're getting in that was made in the last 5 years, you're going to get a spectacular image out of it if you use it the right way. And it might be more annoying to have to change out batteries a certain amount of times, or it may be more annoying to have to rig it out the way you need to rig it out to like turn it into a cinema style camera or whatever. But if you do it the right way and you do your research and you practice a bunch, you can essentially get the same image most of the time that these higher end cameras are getting.
So underrated education on lighting and camera movement.
Yeah. Yeah, to the foundational stuff. Like don't be so attracted to all the flashy stuff that everyone says you need to upgrade and be better.
Yes. At Benjamin Kelly asks, what did you do when you were at a quote unquote stuck point in your career and you couldn't figure out how to progress forward?
Shout out.
Shout out. Yeah.
Love you, dude.
Yeah. Ben, you are so a real one for always commenting on Rally Caps videos also and always showing up. We appreciate you. I would say, speaking personally, I have always championed the idea of like creative diversity in any artist's toolbox. And by that, I mean having other things that are creatively invigorating that aren't the main thing that you are doing as work. I think having other hobbies that are strictly hobbies that are still creative to a certain degree are vital in maintaining your health as an artist. Whether that's like reading, like I talked about earlier, or maybe you're a total cinephile, a movie buff, and you just like to go watch a really good film in order to decompress and feel inspired, or maybe you like to sculpt or paint, or you like to make music, whatever, just something that isn't tied to your income and tied to a client that could trigger any kind of like stress or indecision, or that could emphasize that feeling of being stuck. Having something that you can still feel like you are almost like accomplishing something or bettering yourself in the process that is just totally devoid of your capital C creativity for work, but still engages you on like your inner artist level, I think is hugely, hugely important for everybody's mental health and creative health when it comes to us in the industry.
Fully agree. And knowing where Ben is coming from this, I know him personally, so I know his question is definitely much more of a business front. I know he's discussed that as well, because he's tried and found success in trying new different things.
Okay.
But then it's a matter of where does it become profitable and how can it be sustainable in profitability within a business. I think specifically to your circumstance, Ben, you can really try to find the thing that is making money and really lean into that more. It's also okay to pick up a part-time job during something like this, kind of what we talked about earlier, like get something foundational. And I like that. I'm going to lean on this metaphor because Ben also is like really active. He's a runner. He's in fitness in that world. So much of the fitness world, when people get injured, you just see people be like, oh, I'm sidelined. I have to just sit for weeks now. And the more and more I'm acclimated to that world and have experienced like little injuries here and there, it's counterintuitive, but movement tends to be the thing that heals. Movement, either in strength training, walking, actively going about rehabilitating yourself instead of just resting. I think that's true of business as well. If you find yourself in a really stuck place, almost as if you are injured, movement can be so much better. Doing something about it instead of just waiting for something to come to you. Whether that be you approaching clients that you already have about potential work opportunities or connections you can make with them, actively trying to connect with other people in your industry to see what's possible, making spec ads, making things, posting things, actively getting yourself out there can be the recipe to then finally start to see something come in. It's that whole proof of concept idea again. And so that's not easy. Yeah. Also, coming out of injury is not easy. These things aren't easy. Entrepreneurship isn't easy. And so what I would recommend in that circumstance is like, put your nose down, get to work, and work harder than you have. And that's not an easy answer, and that might not be fun to hear. But you don't know what's possible if you don't put in that extra work and find a way to see what's out there instead of waiting for stuff to come to you. And I'm not saying you're not doing that, Ben, but that's typically how I feel about those situations. That's what I need to do. If I feel like money isn't coming in, then I have to actively go figure out how to make it.
Yeah. I like that analogy. That's really cool. The movement. That's great. At Cyrus Hannah asks, how did you get so jacked? Cyrus.
Dude, it's all the running.
You silly. Oh, you thought he was talking to you.
What?
What? Wait, hang on. What? Any clarification you want to offer there, Cyrus?
Oh, it was on Steven's story. I see how it is.
I see how it is. I don't know who he's talking about. Can't be me, Mr. I did wear a cutoff on this day, of course. I didn't. I filtered the questions this morning. I looked at it, actually. I was like,
uh-oh.
Of course, Nick Barely over here looking ridiculous. Jeez. Thank you. No, do 100 push-ups a day for the rest of your life, and that makes a huge difference.
Do you do 100 push-ups a day?
I do.
Every single day?
I've been doing it for the last 14 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Steven just silently does this stuff. I think I knew that, but you don't talk about it, so.
No. I like it as my baseline, though. I actually would recommend that to people, like Loki. Dang it. I was going to just treat this question as a joke, but now I actually, sincerely, that is like such a really helpful baseline for me, because traveling for work makes routine pretty difficult sometimes when it comes to strength training in particular. And so in the same way that you can take your running shoes on any trip that we go on and you can still go on a run, same thing with push-ups. You can do them anywhere. You could do them literally on an airplane if you had to. You can hotel room where, like, no matter what you're doing or where you're traveling to because of work, you can do push-ups. It's just you and your body. And that's awesome. I think that's really empowering. And so I started doing this, May of 2023, because I was really tired of having very little routine, primarily because of the documentary. We were just traveling so much, and I had other jobs that I was traveling for, and personal life was just like very up and down and like hard to plan around. And so I decided to take back control over at least one thing that I could do and I could control amidst all of that. And that was being able to just do push-ups every day. No matter where I was, what state I was in, what vehicle I was in at any given point in time, I could do push-ups. And so that's been a really empowering thing to have as a daily consistent habit. And seeing the compounding effects of that over the course of over a year now is really amazing. Like I genuinely love it. I would recommend it to anyone and everyone. Doesn't have to be 100, could be 50 to start, could be 20 to start, wherever you're at. Doesn't really matter. It's all relative based off of where you're at and whatever fitness journey that you're on. But I do think it's a really good exercise in general. And it's, again, one that you can do for free anywhere at any point in time.
Yep.
So 100 push-ups a day.
Lunges, sit-ups.
Great also. Yeah.
But so doing it for 14 months now, how many do you do in a row in your first set?
It kind of depends. These days it's like 50 and 50.
50-50.
Yeah. So at the beginning, I couldn't do I loved push-ups in college. Hadn't really taken time to focus on them because it's a different kind of strength than like gym barbell training strength. And I did like 30 and I was gassed at the end of 30. I was struggling to get through the last 5. This was May of 23. And I was like, what the heck happened to me? This used to be not a problem at all. And I don't know what's going on here. And that was kind of a personal point of pride that also kind of in line with the documentary and all the travel and everything. I was like, okay, this is something that I used to be good at that I'm failing at now. Clearly, I've been a little off my game. How do we remedy the situation? 50 and 50. I think, I've done days where I've tried to just hit as many as I can in a row. And I think my peak has been 70 in one set. But I also try to keep form really good the entire time. 70, I'm looking pretty rough near the end of that. It's really tough to get through.
Yeah.
So, I'll even just break it down sometimes where it's 30 or 20 and there's longer holds at the bottom, or, just kind of make it a little harder than it needs to be. And get a little more out of it that way. But typically it's 50 and 50, or if I need to spread it out throughout a work day or a production day or whatever, I'll just do smaller sets, frequently throughout the day. But I try to just knock them out before I get to the studio and then just feel good for the rest of the day. Because anything else on top is just kind of great. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But very excited to have a gym in the building that we're moving to soon.
Nice.
Because that's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
I love my 100 push-ups a day. I'll keep doing them. But having a gym that is 3 floors below you that you can take an elevator to is also really nice. So really looking forward to that.
Sweet.
Yeah, that'll be great. Amazing. Okay, moving on. At Hugo802 asks, what are y'all's thoughts on moving to a bigger city in order to find more work?
If you can, do it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Braxton would agree as well. I think Cyrus would agree
Cyrus
as well.
just went like this.
He's like, yeah.
He looked at me and just did double thumbs
Double
up.
thumbs up. Cyrus. The 2 people in our studio that have done that exact thing would agree.
Yeah.
I think Chad would probably agree as well. Yeah. Producer Chad. If you can and it makes sense, yes. Yeah. But kind of going back to the first question of the episode, it's all relative. Depending on what your situation is, maybe don't like uproot your family to go do that.
Yeah.
If you're single and young and you don't have many obligations or overhead or responsibilities, well, yeah, why not? Just go for it.
The whole "if you can" preface is really important.
Really important.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a good caveat for most of the answers that we give on things.
I think
it's all relative.
A lot of people that I know in the creative world that are thinking about moving to LA or thinking about moving to New York, a lot of those people, I look at them, I'm like, oh yeah, you'll thrive there because your limiting factor might be because where you are right now. And if you could just be steps away, a train ride away from that person, that job, that set, you'll be fine. Yeah. Yep. And someone like Chris, who's just thriving in New York City.
Yes, great example.
Yeah, the cost of living is crazy high in New York City, but he's making way more in New York City than he was in the Bay. So,
yep. Awesome. At Reese, REIS, .best asks, what are some processes that you have set up for yourself that enable you to excel as a freelancer?
Going back to the video, or what did we title that?
Was the
pieces of software, tools,
online tools for business.
Tools for business.
Just go to that episode. Actually, yeah. Online tools for business.
That's 100% the breakdown of
yes.
what that is.
It's a really good episode. It's like 70 minutes. We break down literally step by step every single piece of software, every tool, physical or otherwise, that we use to just make sure our businesses are running smooth.
For me, recently, it's the short film I'm making right now. It's just the fact that I've kind of lived with the idea that I can be messy and still be a creative, and that's how my brain works, and that's how I, quote unquote, thrive. I've been kind of deconstructing that whole idea. Not that I'm like fully ready to abandon it, because there are times where if I'm in the middle of a workday and I'm just like on something and things aren't perfectly organized, that's cool. But relatively speaking, how much more disciplined I am with structure in my life, with limiting chaos. So the short film, the short film is founded on the idea of doing dishes at home. So it's that whole concept of like, if every part of my life is chaotic, my brain is going to also be chaotic. And so if I'm feeling chaos in my head, but everything around me is calm, it's going to set me up for much more success to like calm that chaos in my head.
For sure.
To start organizing that and accomplishing tasks creatively.
Love that. At Jeremy, either De La Cruz or Dela Cruz asks, just became a creative. How do you find small businesses, I assume, to work with?
How would you?
I would definitely pitch decks, reach out via Instagram, send emails. Gene is going through that right now, where he is really hitting the hospitality front for photography and a little bit of video work. And so he has crafted a really beautiful pitch deck. He is sending out, has sent out like hundreds of emails and DMs and like all these things. Like he is really putting his money where his mouth is.
Going
and
back
like,
to the Ben conversation.
Yes.
That.
It's exactly that.
It's like he needed to make money in a new realm. That's what he did. Sent out 100 emails.
Yeah, like
connected with
yes,
agencies.
So committed.
Yeah.
And just making it happen. I was just with him on a shoot yesterday that he was doing for Northwestern, the Pritzker School of Law. Awesome, because one of his friends on the creative team at his church works there, and that was a connection that he used to get in to do interiors there, and that is probably going to be more work down the road, and that's amazing.
Connections.
It's connections, and it's a lot of, it's tough at the start. Don't get us wrong. Like it's brutal to be in that position. Gene did not have a fun time doing any of that, but it is already starting to pay off, even though it's only been about 2 to 3 months of him really actively hitting the grindstone, doing all that.
Yeah.
And depending too on where you live, like maybe the alternative to that is like actually going to the businesses in person and just showing up and like saying, hey, I'm a photographer, I'm a filmmaker, I'm local, I really love what you guys do. Could I do a quick little spec thing for you? Totally free for you. I just want to make a little, 30-second ad for you, or take 10 interior photos or portraits of your baristas or something like that. Like there's so many ways that you can pitch yourself by going to another sentiment that we've shared on the show a lot, working for free and just showing up, doing the thing, proving that you can do it. And then you have portfolio. Maybe they want to pay for it. Maybe they want to hire you for that free thing that you did and then bring you in as like a retainer kind of client. Like there's so many ways that it could grow. Just start by like getting in touch with people in whatever way you can, DM, email, or show up to their storefront. Again, depending on what industry you want to be in. So many good ways that you can do that. And at the end of the day, it really just comes down to you working hard at it, being nice to the people that you are reaching out to, and showing up as the talented person that you are. Hope that helps.
I'm trying to find the story I had recently. I don't know if you remember that I shared this. It was another designer who shared this exact sentiment, and I've seen his reels. Here it is. I don't know if you've seen him.
Oh, CJ. Yeah. He's awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah, he's the best.
And it's one that he did for free. And what I wrote is, it was to his reel talking about this exact concept. I said, I love this. I've been beating this drum for years now. We'll continue to do so. Some people get big mad when they see artists working for free. To those folks, I challenge you to consider the following. Starting has costs. Sustaining has costs. Traditionally, you can spend or borrow money to make a portfolio. But if you've been developing your skills and have something meaningful to offer someone with little to no budget, your spend isn't a monetary one. It's your time and skill. And it's a new portfolio piece for you. A new proof of concept, more compelling evidence to hire you for paid work. Doing work for free, quote unquote, is strategic. And if anyone shouts at you for doing it, you're rewarded with the gratification of getting to do what you want because it's your business. You get to set the rules for yourself. And while some people completely and fundamentally disagree with that approach and how we kind of teach that, that's totally cool. But the reality is they don't get to make the rules.
Correct.
Because no one, the caveat to this, which I kind of wish I had explained it a little bit more there, is that free work is never sustainable for anyone. No one wants to do that indefinitely forever. You can't. And then it just goes back to like, okay, then it's just your hobby.
Yes.
But if you're using it as actually leveraging something to get more clientele, to get paid work, it's essentially the same as you getting a loan from a bank and spending that money and trying to recoup it because you're just spending your time instead of cash or borrowing.
Love that. Go for it. I lost my place on the question list.
No.
There it is. Alex Mo Photo. Shout out Alex, one of my design clients. Favorite lens each of us currently own. I actually asked Gene about this. He was not able to hop on this episode, as you all have probably figured out by now. But he did answer, and he said his current favorite lens is his GF 32-64 f4. That is his medium format zoom lens that he has for his GFX 100S. That lens is awesome. It's very nice. It's very good, especially for the style of work that he is doing, because for interiors, you kind of want that range. No distortion at all. Beautiful color rendering. I used it a little bit yesterday. It's very fun. Awesome lens. I would answer, I actually think I mentioned it earlier in this episode already, but currently really loving that Sony G Master 50 1.4.
Yeah.
Beautiful, truly amazing unicorn little lens. Our buddy Benj made actually a comparison when it first came out to his Leica 50 Summilux. He showed like a side-by-side little sweep. He took the exact same photo, M11 with the Summilux, and then I think A7R5 with the 50 1.4. Took the same photo in his backyard, to show the bokeh, the fall off and everything. And he did that little sweep thing, same exact photo, but you just kind of watch it change ever so slightly. It was indecipherable, honestly. It was so similar.
That's crazy.
And it was the way that it rendered the background in particular that I was shocked by, because it was so beautiful and it was so unique and interesting. It doesn't feel like standard bokeh. It has a little bit of character to it. And I couldn't believe that it was
that messes with your mind when it's Sony versus Leica.
Yeah, you're like,
same image.
I thought
basically.
no, it was unbelievable. I was like, oh, interesting. So switching to Sony wouldn't be like awful.
Yeah.
It's not the worst thing in the world. So I've been loving that lens. Do you have anything that you've been really loving lately?
I haven't tried a bunch of new stuff, honestly, but I have very much loved the RF50 1.2.
Yeah.
It's an incredible lens.
Yep.
On both sides, photo and video. And then second to that has been the 15 to 35 with 1/8 Pro Mist, both on the photo and filmmaking side, especially on the making side with the stabilization in the lens on a C70. Those have been my go-to. I really don't use many lenses outside of those two at this point.
What do you
which
use
is
on
crazy.
your M6 right now? What do you have on there?
I have the Nocton 35.
Okay.
The Voigtlander.
Cool.
Yeah, which I've had for 4 years, but I've been so inconsistent with that camera because it hadn't been CLA'd.
Sure, yeah.
But I just got it CLA'd and I'm sitting on about 7 rolls that need to be developed.
Nice.
I think I might finish my last one off today and then send out all those.
Nice.
And then, fall in love with that setup again.
Yeah. Do you have any plans do you want to change lenses or have it like a different focal length on
I don't
film?
know if I feel the need to change lenses on that camera. Like, if it would really provide that much more value to spend $2,500.
Like on a Leica lens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like because what else am I going to go to? A Zeiss,
Yeah.
which I had previously.
Yeah.
I don't like the vignetting when it's wide open on that lens,
Sure.
but I'm not really all shooting it wide open all that often.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Cool. Nice. At Zachary Cleek asks, thoughts on rebranding and ways to go about it. Love your podcast. Listened since 22.
Wow.
Dude, shout out Zach. Thanks for being around for so long, man.
That's obviously your question.
Yeah, well, I guess there's two ways to approach it. I think one, like literally from a design perspective, in which case my selfish answer would be just email me and we'll talk and we'll figure something out.
Yeah.
Or there's the sense that like you're kind of maybe repositioning your business with a, rebrand visually or rebrand like core content wise.
Yeah.
Visually rebranding, I would highly advocate for it just because I think it's really nice to have a visual refresh that kind of kicks your business in the pants and gets you really excited about what's going on. And I know I personally loved the experience of working with my designer from 5 years ago when I got branding done for my business. I think there's so much value to it. And I think there's something about having your own personal stamp that just makes everything that you're doing feel so much more legit. That was the thing that really made me feel like I was a business owner, even though I had been already doing it for about 2.5 years before I got the branding done. Made such a huge difference mentally for me, and one of my best investments that I've ever made in my business. Then there's obviously the alternative interpretation of that question, which is like rebranding if you are trying to just maybe switch industries or switch lanes or something along those lines. In which case, I'd actually, not to default on the question, but probably just point to the most recent episodes of Rally Caps that we've had, because we've had this conversation from both of our perspectives quite a bit recently, talking about kind of changing lanes, you focusing more on running as a career and a very viable business option, me having photo in the wings, but really focusing more on design lately. Gene having a background in weddings like all of us, but really focusing on hospitality and interiors instead. We've chatted about that so at length recently that I think just deep diving the most recent episodes of the show would be the best answer to give right now, because it covers all of our perspectives on those things. And I think it'd be worth going back in the archive a little bit, maybe within the past 10 episodes, I'd say. We chat about it a lot lately.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be worth going back and listening to those episodes.
Yeah, it's really interesting to have this evolution of all of us individually this year as we've been consistent on Rally Caps, because it's really driving home the point of working together and supporting one another in the process of making a lot of changes. And especially in this podcast in particular, having time to sit down and discuss that stuff and develop philosophies that help really change the trajectory of you stepping into a new section of your career, a new lane. Because at the end of the day, I was thinking about this, about the podcast and why we named it Rally Caps.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of banding together, flipping your hats around and actually believing that something is possible. At the end of the day, if you're unaware of what Rally Caps are, it's in baseball when you're down and you need a hope and a prayer for coming back to win the game, tie the game, send it to extra innings, whatever. And so it's this hope and belief that it's possible. And so finding ways to do that in your own life, or just listening to this show to try to put that wind in your sails.
Yep.
Like, so much can be, so much can be made of hope.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially when it comes to business. It's so horrifying to step into whatever the new thing is, or stepping into full-time entrepreneurship, or making your own income.
Yep.
But it starts at belief in the fact that you can actually do it.
100%. Lost in place again. No big deal. At Outdoor Picks, Hans, another design client of mine. Love you, dude. Thank you for dropping this question, which you actually qualify as not really a question, but he'd love to hear some tips for building simple and effective brand pitches. That's definitely a question. Yeah. I wish Gene was here for this one, because this is definitely his wheelhouse as of late. I will say, to speak on his behalf a little bit, keeping things clean, concise, and as simple and beautiful as possible is really the best way to go about it. Gene and I, very fortunate to hop on a call with our friend Austin John, who's a phenomenally talented hospitality photographer based in LA. He gave us a lot of really great pointers on this exact thing, really, and being in the commercial space and how to pitch and all the things that are required from that. We got to see his deck that he sends out to, companies that he either cold contacting or people that reach out to him. And the real, I think, like what it boils down to is just try to keep things as clear as possible. Again, to kind of just reiterate everything we've been saying so far in a number of these questions, prove the concept. So show them what you're capable of. Make it like 5-6 pages max. Keep your pricing really simple, really clear. Have a whole page dedicated to it. And then explain maybe why you want to work with them in particular, if you are the one reaching out to them. Add some kind of personal sentiment there as well, but make it beautiful. It doesn't have, I feel like pitch decks have always been, at least my perception of them, is like, oh, it's this big scary thing that you have to create. It's like, it's really not. Like it can be as simple as just you showcasing your work in a 6-page PDF. Intro, hello, this is what I want to do, pricing, this is why I like you guys, and like, just going as far to make something like that, I think in and of itself sets you apart from the pack, because most people will reach out and just say, hey, I want to work with you. Hey, I have a request. This would be good for me. Can I do this thing for you, kind of thing? And by you taking that first kind of weird step out of the equation entirely and just pitching with a deck, one, that shows that you put effort into something. Yeah. 2, it shows that you actually are thinking about them as a unique client rather than just like this cold blast that you're sending out to a bunch of people. Yes. So make it personal to them. And then lastly, it's showing that you want to provide them value and you're not just looking for portfolio material for yourself or even a quick check. Like, you could do this as a work for free situation as well. It could be that you're pitching to get paid, or you could just be pitching on trade or for portfolio work. But showing that you want to provide them value above all else, I think, is going to be the thing that makes them want to actually take the time out of their day to entertain talking to you. Yeah. Because the reality is so many people are doing this, depending on what the company is. Like, they probably get so many of these emails, these DMs, these whatever it is, these messages all the time. How do you just set yourself apart from the pack in that case? And I think just honestly doing something what we did. We can't talk about it in detail, but having a pitch deck in the wings for certain brands of certain sizes, stands out to people.
Well, yeah, this thought exercise actually helps me figure out how we will continue that conversation if we get on a phone call, which is likely going to happen soon.
Yes, we're talking about a real thing now.
Yes. So to take what you said and bring it a step further, which is another source of inspiration that I didn't bring up recently, is Donald Miller's Building a Story brand. Because then to personalize that deck even more to that brand is then identifying problems that they have and then figuring out how you can be part of that resolution for them. So looking at them as the hero of their own story and you coming in as a guide to kind of hold their hand and be like, let's solve this problem together. So it's, give any specific story about, it's Home Alone 2 and it's the bird lady that helps Kevin along to solve his problem. It's most stories you can, I don't know why I thought of that, but if you can then identify that pain point, it actually brings so much more attention to your pitch, because it takes the focus away from you, which they were not thinking about you before this.
Totally.
They didn't even know who you were. So then if you identify, hey, I know you're having this problem, and this is how I can help you solve it, they're going to be so much more prone to want to hand you money to solve that issue, because it's going to make them more profitable and solve that issue for them.
100% agree. Yep. Love that. Okay. Last question of the episode. It's a two-parter from our friend at the Nate Black. Nate, you're the best. First question, favorite photographer right now? Anyone that you're specific, that kind of almost falls in like the inspiration category? Maybe
yeah, that's
a
where
little
I'm
bit.
like, I haven't been paying attention enough to photographers to really have a clear answer.
Yep.
I have ones that are my go-to, but I think that speaks to how much I haven't been paying attention.
Sure. To like new talent.
Really love Joe Hale.
Joe's work is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe Hale's in the running space. Again, that's where my mind and thoughts have been. Love all the work that he does. If it's a major track event or a major marathon, it's almost like a street photographer's eye with a telephoto lens.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
It's not the typical like 300 mil down city blocks kind of telephoto street photographer. I mean, like, he's getting all these gritty details on people's face, like real things that are happening, but super close. I really have enjoyed his work recently.
Similarly, Faisal Westcott, I think, kind of falls in that category, whose work I love. He does the exact thing of street photography, but with a telephoto lens, which some street photographers balk at.
Hate it.
I think
I don't hate it.
Yeah,
People hate it.
People definitely have
and
opinions
give him
about
a lot
it.
of crap for it.
But his work is just beautiful. I mean, he makes paintings on the street, and it's awesome. And I've likened Joe's work to Faisal's in the same sense, where you're taking a literal different perspective of a genre that is typically photographed very specifically in one very specific way.
Yeah.
No longer wide angle, it's suddenly telephoto.
Yeah.
It's no longer the traditional down lane on the track. It's from the side, it's more personality. It's all these details that often go unnoticed. I do love Faisal's work. I was going to mention Teo Crawford, who's a friend of the show. We mentioned him on our favorite YouTubers list as well in that episode, maybe a month ago. Teo's work is just so peaceful. Every time it feels like no matter what, every image he makes is just, it's perfect every time. It's really, really calming and grounding, which I really like in his work. Like, all of the landscapes that he photographs just have a certain warm, nostalgic, peaceful connotation to them. And I really enjoy looking at them because of that. So, Teo. Yeah, amazing. And then Nate's other question that he asked was, do you feel like it's good to take a break from photography in order to fall in love with it again?
Yep.
Same.
I've been in it, and now I'm really excited to get back. And it's been, trying to do something completely different artistically the past 2.5 years in documentary filmmaking, feature-length documentary. And now that is complete, I pretty fundamentally feel like that is not what I want to pursue. I'm open to that possibility now that we have a ton of skill in the field, but I really, really miss film photography. That's why I'm so excited that my M6 is back in action, getting an on-camera flash for it and having it be a camera that can be used in any circumstance, wherever I am. I've been bringing it everywhere just in case.
Yeah. Have you've been using the SF20?
Oh yeah.
Do you have like a whole roll that you shot with it yet at this point?
Oh, like 3.
Heck yeah.
Yeah,
Sick.
yeah. So there's track night tonight, Twilight 5000.
Oh, sick. Tracksmith?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
So maybe take some photos there tonight. We'll see.
Sick.
But yeah, it's just, at least I haven't seen any of the new images yet. I know what that camera's capable of, but every roll has been flawless through it, at least from what I've experienced. And so I think once I get those rolls back, it's just going to light everything up again for me.
Great. Yeah. I got nothing more to say about it. I think yes. I think it's really nice to just take a break, or in a certain sense, take a break by way of introducing a new medium of photography. I think a lot of us at the studio a few years ago really drilled down on film photography for the sake of kind of finding the spark of joy with photography as a whole. And there's something really beneficial about having the same medium, but treating it completely differently than you would your digital cameras in a work context. That was very refreshing. Still allowed us to be actively engaged in photography when we wanted to be. But to answer Nate's question directly, I do think it's very valid to just take an entire step back sometimes in order to make sure that you're kind of nurturing your artist's soul and still loving the thing. Because the worst thing, I think, is just grinding so hard on like a certain artistic outlet to make money out of it that you end up hating the thing in the end and resenting it. Like that just feels like such a loss. So take a break if you need to and find that spark of joy and let it come back to you when the time is right. Great. That was a wonderful episode.
Yeah.
We didn't get to every question, but I have a feeling the R5C is going to die in a second, and I don't want to attempt fate here. We had a lot of questions come in. We're so appreciative of all of them. I don't think it's possible for us to really ever get through all of the questions, but please keep sending them in. We will just keep a continuous log of any questions that are submitted at any point in time so that we have them ready for Q&A episodes like this one. We really love doing these episodes. They're just very fun, and they're always such like weird mishmash of like different topics and things. And it's very fun to engage with all of you very directly in that sense. Instead of us choosing a topic, it's literally entirely dictated by all of you. And we really like doing that. So thank you for submitting your questions. We appreciate you very much. Again, if you have the time, just 15 seconds, hop on Spotify, drop a little rating, Apple Podcasts, whatever that is, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a comment down below for any topics that you're interested in for future episodes of Rally Caps. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Great. Love you.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.